everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78s, and taking a little leap west here from like the downtown area, going out to Schaumburg / Hanover Park area, and with my friend NaShantá. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. Full disclosure, we worked, and I got your name correctly, right? NaShantá,
Yes.
not
Yes.
Natasha.
Right.
That you were
It
called
has
for
all
2
the
years.
same letters.
That you were called, I didn't know that you were called Natasha for 2 years while at WGN, which is a very WGN story. So I love that's how we know each other. We worked at WGN for a long time.
Yes. That story was with a security guard that just, when you see it on paper, NaShantá and Natasha have all the same letters. I have an extra N in it, but if you shuffle around the letters, you could spell Natasha with my name. And like, she mispronounced it and said it wrong, and I let it go. And then it just kept happening for 2 years. And I let it go on for so long that I didn't know how to tell her that wasn't my name. So that's
yeah, sometimes it's just, it's a lot. Well, you were at WGN for how long in total?
I worked, so before working at GN, I was doing news design at CLTV. So I was at CLTV when CLTV merged with WGN. And then I'd worked there from the summer of 2009 to 2019. So I was at GN for 10 years, like in the building, but working with the company for much longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, I was about that same time, like, except I left last year, but either way, a long time to be at one place, which is incredible, especially this day and age. But you do, you're an illustrator, graphic designer, you did a bunch of things that people saw on the news all the time. They didn't know it was your work, but they probably know your work very well, just based on, especially like people like my parents who watch WGN like 9 hours a day, where all the graphics, all the fun things, even on social media, you created all of those things.
Yeah, so when I first started at GN, I was on the evening shift and I was doing graphics for CLTV and WGN. And eventually, like before I had my son, I moved to the morning shift because just that schedule would be better for my family. And getting on the morning show, then I started to do more of the like comical, like composites where we're taking like Robin's face and putting it on a different body, like all of those kind of goofy graphics. So working on the morning show, I did that for like 5 years, I think. And that is where a lot of my creativity came out. When I started incorporating illustration into work graphics was also during the time I was on the morning show as well. The social media stuff that you mentioned, I was doing food day illustrations where I would bring in watercolor paints and like paint and draw a food day. Like we had cheeseburger day, like
I remember
dish
those.
pizza day. Yeah, like I would do those illustrations and then just I would photograph them because they didn't scan well. Like we didn't have any good way to scan them. I would photograph them, bring them into Photoshop and like mess with the saturation and then add text and then give it to the web producers and they would put it on like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So that was fun to get to actually do some drawing and painting as part of my job. And then once people in the building found out that I was an artist, then I started to get projects that included illustrations, like the B team. They did the what is it? Is it Family Ties? They did a Family Ties.
Yes, they did. Like a spoof,
like
opening,
shot for shot recreation.
Yeah.
And I did the portrait, like the family portrait, and that was fun.
I didn't know that. It's
yeah,
funny
I
how you can
the anchors to be the cast of the show. So that was fun because I used a reference picture. So the heights aren't accurate to real life, but I try to make it accurate to the Family Ties like photo. But yeah, it was a fun place to work and to get to like get a little more creative because it was less strict than like just the evening news, which was very news driven, and the morning show has a lot more entertainment involved. So there were more opportunities to do some fun things.
Yeah, that morning show has a way of taking what you do the first day you walk into that setting and completely changing everything and really finding your creative heartbeat before you leave. I mean, I think that's the beauty of the WGN Morning News for so many people that are there now, that have spent any time there. It's kind of one of those things, either you thrive in it or it's not for you at all. It's one or the other, you know, but either way, the creative process though is something to behold, just with, because it's constant every day, got to do something every day. And so it could wear you out too, but it led to you being recognized. I mean, I read on your bio here that you've Emmy Award nominated and the whole thing. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, actually, the project that I was nominated for, it was Mike Lowe did a story about Illinois taxes, and he had a whole section where he's talking to somebody and they're talking numbers, and he wanted to illustrate the information. And originally he was like, it'll be like 4 drawings, and it ended up being 90 seconds of a package that I had to fill with illustrations. And so it was almost kind of like a little comic where I drew Mike Lowe and I drew the guy he was talking to, and I was animating things that they were saying. So I got to draw a lot of it, and then I would bring it into After Effects. And that story was nominated for an Emmy. And I was like, whoo, I might win an Emmy, because Mike Lowe wins so many Emmys. And that was like the one he didn't win. So
of course
he won like 3 others that night or something, because he's always winning Emmys. But I was proud that the one project that I got a nomination for was one that I actually incorporated illustration in. So it felt validating for me, even though we didn't win. It felt validating as an artist to have that project be nominated.
Yeah, I can sympathize for getting it nominated but not winning, but still it's still cool to see your name on that sheet that comes out with all the nominations, and know like, oh, people actually care about my work, or the stuff that we do here, which sometimes we get in our own way, like you get in your own head that you're just doing this project for this one person, and then but you forget that potentially millions of people can see it. So
yeah,
that happens. So you spent your time at WGN, and then, like a lot of people, some other things happen and you find opportunities elsewhere, but it seemed like your opportunity to really, you've done illustrations for books, children's books specifically. And that's something that that's currently what I'm guessing your passion is now, to continue to do that and really thrive in that. So congratulations on that. And that's why I wanted to chat with you, just because I love it when people do things outside of WGN or move on from WGN, because I'm trying to do the same thing myself, first of all. But second of all, people, it's a hard leap when you are comfortable, at a place for so long, to go and do something that you really find some of your passion, and that's what you're doing now.
So yeah, and working in news, I had up until recently worked in broadcast news since I was 19 years old. So after high school, I went to a vocational school that was like for radio and TV broadcasting, and then I got a full-time job at an ABC affiliate in Green Bay, Wisconsin, like at age 19. So I had been working full-time in news since age 19. And when I had my son, I started reading picture books and like getting books from the library a lot more. And I always loved art, and I used to draw a lot. I actually wanted to go to art school after high school, but it's really expensive, and I couldn't convince my parents or myself that I would be able to have a career in art. So I thought, radio and television is something. Yeah, here I am as an artist. So it had always been something that I enjoyed, and one of those things where it's like, oh, I wish I could work. I actually wanted to maybe work in children's television or work on movies or do animation, and I didn't do any of that stuff. But when I started reading picture books, and looking at all of the art and thinking like, you know, it's somebody's job to illustrate these books, and like, could I do that? Let me look into it. So I started to research, and I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a nonprofit organization with publishing professionals. And they have incredible like resources. They do conferences and like portfolio critiques, and it's just an amazing community. And I learned so much about publishing through that organization. And I was able to get a literary agent, which is like the person who connects authors and illustrators with the publishers. So all of the work I get comes through my agent. Like publishers will contact my agent and say like, oh, we have a book project, like, is her schedule open for this, or is she interested? And that's how I get my illustration work. And it's not one of those things that happens immediately. Like some people can get an agent and then start doing books right away. For me, it took, I think almost 3 years from when I got my agent to when I got these books were my first book projects with Scholastic.
Wow,
And
Scholastic though, that's huge.
It is. And like I grew up with Scholastic book fairs.
The book fair,
And
yeah, of course.
yeah, and these just like it's exciting to get to work with such a well-known publisher for my first projects. The author is Divnity Roxx. She's an amazing musician. She used to be the bassist in Beyonce's all-female band, and she is creating children's music. So these books are based on song lyrics for her debut children's album, which was nominated for a Grammy, which is amazing. Wow. So now I can say that I've worked on Grammy nominated books, whatever. But yeah, so like from joining the SCBWI and trying to put a portfolio together for myself and getting an agent, like all of those things helped me get to where I am in publishing. But in the background, I was still working full time, and I was just kind of pursuing art as like a side thing. And when Scholastic approached us about these books, and it was 2 books, and they had a really tight deadline, I was like, okay, can I quit my job? Like, can I afford to, because at the time I was just starting freelancing. We were in the pandemic, and I was working full time as a news design manager with NewsNation. So it was like I was working full time, had a freelance part-time job, and I had a son. And then Scholastic is like, we have 2 books that we want you to illustrate. And I'm like, what?
Everything happens all at once.
Yeah, so that's when it was like, okay, based on just money that we had saved up, I could afford to quit my full-time job, focus on these books, and then just get more freelance work, because I had already just started freelancing. And so if I made freelance a bigger part of my income, I was like, okay, this could be a new career path for me. So it's scary, especially when all I've ever done was news. It's hard to just say like, okay, let me just quit this and start something new. But that's what I did. And it was 2021. And I feel like with the pandemic going, like a lot of things come into perspective during the pandemic. Like you just start reassessing like what's important to you and what's worth trying and what's worth pursuing. And it was like, this is absolutely what I would love to do. And I want to make a shift and go into publishing. And it seems so scary and unknown, but I took a leap of faith and like, here I am.
Good for you. And that's why I wanted to talk to you. I love that story. I too did something similar in my career. The pandemic put things in perspective, and that's how I'm ended up talking to you as I am now. But I love your story so much, just because I remember, having emails back and forth with me and Anna Roberts and you talking about things we wanted for the morning show. And here I see you on LinkedIn of all places, showing the books that were published that you illustrated. I think that's just wonderful. I think it's fantastic. And I love talking to people who kind of take a chance on themselves. They bet on themselves to come out on the other end, and you're doing it. And that's why I just thought it was an inspirational story. And I just wanted to talk to you about it. And I think it's great. And, it's Mother's Day. So, why not? Well, I'll post it out before Mother's Day as a badass mom doing her thing. I think
Oh,
it's awesome.
thank you. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely, it's scary because like when I quit my job and took these books on, like it was 2 books and that was it. Like the way publishing works, I know a lot of people are unfamiliar with how publishing works. As an illustrator, I don't get hired to illustrate a book until a publisher gets a manuscript from an author. Like Divnity writes these books and Scholastic is like, okay, we want to purchase this, and they will hire an artist for it. So it's really competitive if you're just an illustrator, because you're competing with the whole pool of artists that exist out there. And I remember the email from the editor at Scholastic, and I've gotten emails before about book projects, and either I'll say, yes, I'm interested because I was very eager to do a book, and they would pick a different artist. Like I would be part of a small pool of illustrators that they're considering, and they usually would end up picking someone else. And I thought in my head, I'm like, ooh, Scholastic, this is going to be cool. But I wasn't getting too excited because I've had other opportunities where they pick someone else, other publishers. And I reread the email and they specifically mentioned my name. They're like, is NaShantá Fletcher available? And they put a link to my portfolio. And I was like, oh, wait, they're like asking specifically for me in this email.
Wow, vindication right there.
Yeah. And then the first meeting, like they wanted to schedule a meeting, and I'd never had a meeting with a publisher. And the vibe of the call was kind of like, this is when we need sketches and this is when we need blah, blah, blah. Like they were basically explaining the timeline of everything as if I were hired for it. And I was like, wait, so I have this gig, like this is like, because I didn't know that they had picked me and that this was it. I thought it was like, oh, they're talking to other artists too. So it was just, it happened so fast and it was so exciting. But at the same time, it was just 2 books. Like once that year ended, I was like, okay, what will I do the next year? Because freelancing is just it's one of those things where you get paid when you get projects. And I was so worried that I would have a hard time getting more work. And I've been lucky that the first freelance client that I had, Cottage Door Press, which is they're an indie children's book publisher. They do novelty books, and they're out in Rolling Meadows. Like I started doing freelance work for them while I was still working in news. And when I told them the situation, they opened up the opportunity for me to get more work hours with them. So I have a consistent source of income by doing projects for them. And then throughout I feel so green in freelancing. I've only been doing it for like 2 years now, but since then I've had editorial illustration opportunities. I did a illustration for the Chicago Reader, which was amazing. I did storyboard work for Encyclopedia Britannica, and they found me through LinkedIn. Like that wasn't even anything that I pursued. They found me and reached out to me.
That's so great.
So since freelancing, have been trying to put my work out more and actually utilizing LinkedIn a lot, because I've been able to get freelance work through LinkedIn, because this is like, I have to market myself now that I don't have like a full-time employer. And it's just been, so what I was worried about before was not having enough work. And now it's like, I don't have time to do all of the work that is coming to me. So that it's a good problem to have, but
you gotta take it while you can, right?
Yeah, because it's like, you never know. Like when I got the Scholastic books, there was another publisher that was interested in me illustrating another project during the period where I was working on these 2 books. And I was like, I can't, like, I want to, but I can't. Like, I was so worried that I would stretch myself too thin and say yes to many things and drop the ball on all of it. So I said no to that, but I was so worried because I'm like, if I say no, they never contact me again. And that's one of those things that you worry about as a freelance artist, is like, if you don't have time to work on something, will that client come back? And like, there will always be something. So it's like, it's scary, but so far I haven't had issue with finding work, which has been incredible. So it's very scary though, because I don't get paid time off. That's another thing. I
Yeah,
do miss
sure.
that. So whenever, like,
Yeah,
I have to make sure that I budget and save enough to just take time off or take a break. And that's something I'm still trying to figure out, the work-life balance of that whole
yeah.
thing.
Well, that's always a constant for sure. But if people want to find information about you or see what you're doing, what's the best way for people to find you, publishers or just, Joe Schmoes like me who could come upon a LinkedIn post, but is there a website you want people to go to?
Yes. So my website is my first name, NaShantá.com, NaShantá.com. And on social media, I'm at Nash Sketches on like all the platforms. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, which I'm not super active on, but I do have TikTok. But yeah, so
Ditto.
Nash Sketches on social media, and NaShantá.com is my website.
Well, I look forward to seeing the other things that you have coming up here on your platforms as well. It's been a pleasure catching up with you and talking to you again. And congratulations on all the success that you've already achieved. That's a wonderful thing to see. And my continued success going forward to you.
Thank you. Thank you.